All right, what's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. Today is December 11th, 2023. And what I want to go through is just some cyber news. I like to keep in the up and up. One of the things about this career is you have to be in the know of what's going on out there to help you better protect your security posture, with the company that you work for. With today's news and all the different hacking and all the different events that we see in the news, I think it's worth mentioning some of the other news that's probably not disclosed out there. So as I go through this, I just kind of want to pinpoint some things that I thought was interesting. These are like the top three headlines that I saw for today. Not every day is there something interesting, but when there is, I typically like to go in here and talk about it. So one of the big things I saw is 2 years on. This is from the Register, by the way. 2 years on, 1 in 4 applications are still vulnerable to Log4j. So a little bit about the article. It's talking about a lack of awareness, still blamed for patching apathy or empathy, despite it being among most infamous bugs of all time. But most infamous bugs being the Log4j vulnerability. 2 years after the Log4Shell, we're talking December 2021 here, by the way. So December of 21 is when the Log4j or Log4Shell, same thing, vulnerability was discovered. It came out as a zero-day exploit, and I'll talk about that, but basically that means there was no patch and there was a fix currently being created for this particular vulnerability. So in the open source Java-based Log4j logging utility, it was disclosed that there was an issue with that particular vulnerability. Circa 1 in 4 applications are dependent on outdated libraries, leaving them open to exploitation. So I think ultimately, let me pivot here. Ultimately, it's good to know what's happening in the current landscape, as you can see here. But I want to talk about a little bit of what Log4j is, because it's huge. When this first happened, when I first heard about it back in December of 21, we were practically shutting down, or locking down rather, all Apache servers. So if we weren't using them, if they were used for testing, whatever it was, we just wouldn't use them until they were patched, until we had a fix, because this vulnerability was that bad. So understanding what Log4j is, or Log4Shell, Log4j is a logging framework developed by the Apache Software Foundation. As the name suggests, Log4j is a logger. Just think of it like that. It's a logger. What the heck is it logging? It records important information like error messages and user inputs in a program. So Apache, let's understand that. Apache is an open source web server software that is developed and maintained by the Apache Software Foundation. In a nutshell, Apache is a web server service that's typically spun up in Linux, and you'll use it for launching websites or using it for some other type of service. Maybe you're testing your web application firewalls. You need to launch some Apache services to kind of see how things like cross-site scripting and the different vulnerabilities, partake in that service, and how we can mitigate those services. So sometimes we use Apache for vulnerabilities, trying to figure out how to mitigate security headers, exposure, different things like that. So Log4j is an open source software library, a package of pre-written code that developers can freely use instead of writing their own languages. So think like Bootstrap, just something that helps as a library, a code within code that helps them develop. In this case, it's a service. It helps them log things like user information, application information. It helps writing their own loggers so developers can plug the Log4j library into their applications itself. It's just a convenient way for them to understand what's happening, with their web application. So it's also it's used and integrated and correlated to bigger applications like Microsoft and Amazon, to name a few. So Log4j arises from older versions of Log4j 2, which basically is also known, it handles, the service within this service handles what's called Java Naming and Directory Interface, or JNDI, lookups. JNDI is an application programming interface, or API. You probably heard of that before. Which the API that Java applications use to access resources hosted on external servers. So JNDI lookup is a command that tells an app to go to a server and download a specific object. So like a piece of data or script, older versions of Log4j automatically run any code downloaded this way. So Log4j or shell is common vulnerability exposure. The CVE, the identifier, is labeled under CVE 2021 44228, which is a remote code execution vulnerability. All the CVE is, it's just a way to identify the exposure. There's so many vulnerabilities out there. We need a way to find and tag these exposures. So it's labeled under 44228 if you want to go take a look at it. And you just got to look up CVE 2021 44228 on Google, and it'll pop up through MITRE. So MITRE is like the website that orchestrates all these CVEs and reports on them. And basically, the flaw affects Apache Log4j 2 versions 2.14.1 and earlier. So Log4j 2.15 and later is the fix. So hackers can use the JDNI functionality to execute malicious arbitrary code remotely. So first, this is what they do. The hacker will set up a server using a common protocol like Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP, to avoid drawing attention. And then next, they store a malicious payload on that server, such as malware file, some type of malicious code, what have you, exploitable for execution, a payload. And then they find a JNDI lookup to a program. They send a JDNI lookup to a program, telling it to go to the attacker's LDAP server, which downloads the payload and executes the code, then therefore being the impact of Log4Shell. So basically, this code is it's executed from Log4j services looking up through the JDNI functionality that executes the malicious code. So as it's logging, it's trying to find that information. It's told to get a response from this vulnerability server, and it pulls in the executed code from that server. So the impact of Log4j is, one, it was a zero-day exploit, meaning no patch was available. Log4j is one of the most widely used logging libraries, built in consumer endpoints, web applications, and enterprise cloud services. Companies can't always tell right away if they're vulnerable. Finally, Log4j is very easy to exploit. Hackers need no special permissions or any type of authentication to exploit this. Going back, fixing Log4j is stuff like patching systems. That's the first thing we want to do. But sometimes you can't patch the system, right? So versions 2.15.0 of Log4j can't be patched because maybe app owners don't have the maintenance window approximated time, or that it's running an older version and the service has to run with that particular version of Apache, or that logger can't be used for that certain reason. There's all kinds of reasons for not being able to patch things. So what we'll typically do is we'll manually just shut Log4j off on those servers in Apache. That's really the best way to do it, because if we don't turn it off, the vulnerability is still consistent unless we can update that Log4j version to the 2.15 update. And then also what we can do, we can just turn off the Java parameters. So we can just basically change the system properties to not allow lookups through JDNI and all that different stuff. So if you're running any older version from 2.10 through 2.15, you're still vulnerable, and that's what this is going through. Also, updating your rules and security infrastructure rule sets is a good way to do these type of updates as well. Okay, so going through the pipeline here, another thing I found, this was interesting. Interpol busts human trafficking luring victims with fake online job applications, or job ads. So imagine you're going on Indeed. I'm not entirely sure where these are popping up at. I'm assuming I hear Interpol at different countries. I'm seeing things like Dubai and other countries, Peru. So I'm assuming assumption is that these job applications are being posted, through possibly websites overseas. Different countries, what have you. So the operation covered a range of cyber scam cases, including 40 Malaysian victims lured to Peru for a high-paying job, and then several citizens taken to Dubai after being hired for employment before being diverted to Thailand and Myanmar. I'm not sure if I'm saying Myanmar. Anyway, the Interpol operation targeted human trafficking-fueled fraud named Operation Storm Makers 2. It has uncovered that crimes are spreading around or beyond Southeast Asia. The global initiative is to design to combat human trafficking and migrant smuggling, shedding light on the intricate network of cyber scams. Law enforcement agencies from 27 countries were mobilized from this operation. So Interpol efforts have generated significant results, leading to the arrest of 281 individuals, that's good to know, involved in a range of offenses, including human trafficking, passport forgery, corruption, telecommunication fraud, and sexual exploitation. Additionally, authorities have successfully rescued 149 victims through 360 investigations, with some still ongoing. So, keep safe out there, guys. Maybe this is more of a conversation for people who are working out of seas, but this just came out today. It's a 3-minute read. Also, I'm going to put the link in the description for you guys so you guys can kind of get your take on these and read through them if you want. But interesting headline. Another one is the Google patched Chromecast vulnerabilities exploited at hacking contest. Article was put out today, but I believe the hacking contest, Hardpon USA 2023, this was in July. So the actual vulnerability was found in July. So this might just be like a recap of saying, hey, we found these vulnerabilities, and kind of like, reclassifying what it is, what it's all about. Google recently announced patches for several high and moderate severity Chromecast vulnerabilities that were exploited earlier this year at a hacking competition. Google informed customers about the fixes for the Chromecast flaws last week, or to announce an Android security update for December. The tech giant told users that the latest update for its streaming device addresses a total of 3 vulnerabilities affecting AM logic chips. That sounds like supply vendor chain vulnerabilities, where the supplier who provides the AM logic chips more than likely had an exploit into the chips. So there's an issue with the chips from the start. They're put into the Chromecast, and then now we have an exploitable from the actual supplier of the chips. Because when we create these devices, IoT devices, and all these different appliances out there, we don't know if that the actual supplier who supplied the technology that goes inside the appliance, or in this case a Chromecast, was vulnerable, right? I mean, there might be some supply vendor chain risk that were executable, right? And that they have some type of, arbitrary code embedded within these actual, these chips and these different components that go into these machines. So specifically the U-boot subcomponent, a one case issue, and a keychain, and specifically in the system component. The vulnerabilities were presented in July at the Hardpon USA 2023. Researchers earned between a few $100s. Google has created Nolan Johnson of Direct Defense. So these are kind of the experts talking about it. Here's our CVEs again, talking about what CVEs they are. So this is a 2023 type of CVE. Direct Defense last week published a blog posting detailing the full secure boot exploit chain. So this is interesting. Let's see if we can pull this up real quick. And guys, this is what cyber is all about, is just kind of looking at vulnerabilities. If we use Chromecast, right, for instance, if we had, within our offices and within our, maybe the leadership board or whoever is using a Chromecast, we might want to look into this and say, hey, what is up with this secure boot bypass? So ultimately, this is super tiny. Secure boot bypass and stuff like that is what we're looking at, and trying to get a better understanding of how to, especially when purchasing third parties such as eBay. Okay, so it's kind of going into a detailed idea of maybe steering away from eBay, possibly buying these Chromecasts at the source, where these products often undergo frequent resale due to flash sales. Caution is advised, many TV boxes circulating in these markets. So yeah, I would think ultimately is getting it from the source, buying it from Chrome or the Chromecast website, probably your best bet, so we can kind of escape the vulnerabilities within this particular third-party vendor risk, in my opinion. So secure boot bypass, something to definitely check out. Anyway, that's all I have today, guys. Pretty interesting stuff. Stay safe out there. And always, if you want to hit me up, I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. I'll put all my links down below. Just hit me up if you have any questions, anything like that. DM me on Instagram or Facebook. Pretty easy to get a hold of me there. And you guys stay safe out